Greetings, I'm Russ from Deadfoot Arms LLC, and the purpose of this video is to give you a look at the inner workings of the Deadfoot Arms modified cycle system. The Deadfoot Arms modified cycle system differs from your standard AR platform cycle in that it's a dual spring and bufferless cycle system. The standard AR platform, as we're all familiar, you got your bolt carrier, you have a buffer, and a buffer spring. When the weapon is fired, the gas, if you're running DI, or the piston, if you're running a piston system, is going to force the bolt backwards, which will compress this spring until it nearly fully collapses within the buffer tube. Of course, we know what we know about physics. That spring is going to come back, and the buffer and the spring are going to ensure that this bolt carrier and the bolt fully returns the battery so the weapon can be fired again. Standard system invented by Eugene Stoner over 50 years ago. The modified cycle system. The concept is the same. You've got springs, you've got a bolt, you've got a buffer tube, but everything else is really different. The dual spring system, I guess the best word would be it operates, or it reacts much like a buffered system would because of the dual springs. And essentially, it's the recoil spring in our system that ends up doing the work similar to what a buffer would do. Let me quickly orient you to the components. Deadfoot Arms modified cycle system, first off, has a shortened bolt carrier group. Our bolt carrier group is shortened in length by 1 3/8 inches. Here's your standard M16A2 bolt carrier. Here's the Deadfoot Arms M16A2 bolt carrier. Same carrier, just reduced in length by 1 3/8 inches. Other than that, they are identical. This is your buffer spring. The buffer spring is the spring that rests flush against the back of the carrier in the system and does the majority of the work near the midpoint of the cycle when the bolt is fully retracted to the rear. This is our plunger. The plunger system sits inside of the buffer spring throughout the operation, and the plunger also will, and why it's called a plunger, will plunge inside the carrier as the carrier again is approaching the the midpoint of the cycle. And then this component, we'll put those two together so you can see it here, is our recoil spring. The recoil spring rests inside of the plunger, just like so. This is the guide rod. Now, the guide rod, for all intents and purposes, when you receive a Deadfoot Arms modified cycle system, isn't a separate part. It's gonna come as a part of this buffer tube assembly. Hopefully you can see it there in the video, just right inside there. That guide rod, and I'll show you on here, rests right inside the recoil spring. So when the weapon is assembled, there's your buffer tube, and your recoil spring there is inside the buffer tube. The main benefit of the modified cycle system, obviously, is the shortened length of the buffer tube. By shortening the length of the buffer tube, it allows you to apply, for our, in our case, we came out with the folding stock adapter, which allows you to shorten the overall length of the rifle, but because the cycle is all contained within that shortened buffer tube, it allows us to retrofit our weapon with a folding stock adapter. And everything that's happening from here on back, unlike a traditional AR-15, the cycle is, nothing's happening in here. It's all happening in here. So we can apply a folding stock, store it shorter, but do that without disabling the weapon, and that's really the key. The other benefit here is the reduced effects that the modified cycle system has on bolt bounce. Quick lesson in bolt bounce. What bolt bounce is in any piston DI operated system in the AR platform, when that bolt is returning to battery, right at that point, the bolt is going to bounce off the back of the upper receiver, really the area of the starter chamber, the bolt face there, just a little bit, and that bounce can have an effect on the consistency of the operation of the weapon. The reason bolt bounce exists in the standard AR platform, and the reason why it can become an issue, is really the design of this system. If you remember, inside your buffer tube, you have something called the buffer retention pin or buffer retaining pin, and the buffer is only going to go so far, basically to the end of the butt tube. The buffer tube. Right there where it meets basically the back of the upper receiver, and it's going to stop there. So there's still tension on this spring inside the buffer tube, but this isn't going any further. The modified cycle system, even while stored, there's some tension on these springs. So the benefit that has is, no matter what the situation is, when you fire the weapon and that bolt's coming back, the bolt's fully going to return to battery every time the weapon is fired. And for those of you that are familiar with ARs, which hopefully is most of you, otherwise I'm not quite sure why you're watching this, but you can see here that when I pull back on the charging handle just a little bit, on a typical system, I'm going to have to use the forward assist, to make sure the bolt fully seats. But with our system, you don't have to do that. There's, the spring tension of the recoil spring is going to ensure that it fully returns a battery every time. The benefit to that is, for those of you who have done, a lot of quick fire drills or rapid fire drills, or have operated the weapon in fully automatic fire, that from time to time, due to bolt bounce, you're going to have situations where the bolt doesn't fully seat. And then you're going to have to provide immediate action to the weapon to get it operating again. In some cases, that's just a matter of, hitting the forward assist. However, that it is going to prevent you from, operating the weapon for a second or two, and it also requires you to take your hand off the trigger. With our system, the reduced bolt bounce effects, in essence, the bolt still bouncing off the bolt face, but because of the consistent pressure of the spring, making sure it returns the battery quicker, it reduced the overall effects or timed events, over the course of 1,000, 10,000 rounds, in which that's going to happen. In the case of the modified cycle system, it'll never happen because the spring tension won't allow it. I want to thank you for taking the time to watch Deadfoot Arms videos. You can learn more about Deadfoot Arms on our webpage. It's www.deadfootarms.com. From the website, feel free to contact us. There is a contact us link on the page, and we'll be sure to get back to you with any questions you may have as quickly as possible. You can also reach out to us over our social media platforms. We're on Facebook. We are also on Instagram. Just search for @DeadfootArms. Or we're also on Twitter @DeadfootArms as well. So thank you for watching our video, and stay safe out there.